Hello, everyone, and wanted to welcome Autumn Schinka. She is a financial advisor, and she is going to tell you a little bit about herself.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me here today. I am a financial advisor with Thrivent Financial, and I came into this business in the financial world from actually a previous job in the corporate world, but just really felt a calling into helping people with their finances. And in particular, I have helped numerous people with the financial side during the uncoupling process. So I'm excited to be here today just to share some of that knowledge and expertise and some stories from people who've gone through the process.
Great. So, you mentioned you had helped numerous people go through the uncoupling process. Where do you start in regards to their finances?
Well, unfortunately, the uncoupling process is just very expensive. It's very cash hungry. So, you think of there's filing fees, there's potential attorney fees, retainers, there's mediation fees, there's potentially rent for if you live in an apartment or you live separately, there's counseling costs. I mean, it's just kind of endless when it comes to potential fees and costs during this process. And so I start out with folks as they're going through this process to just start level setting that cash, setting aside cash and as much money as we can to pay for these unexpected items during the uncoupling process is really key. I think of one particular woman who, as she was going through the uncoupling process, she started to kind of think of, before she actually started the process, she thought of some items that she'd been putting off for a while. So, for example, she had some dental work that she'd really just kind of been putting off because of the cost to it. She had some things with her car that her car just wasn't really working all that well. And so, this idea of kind of taking care of some of these items that would cost money really helped her to get these things kind of checked off the list so that then, as she went into this season where she had all these unexpected costs, at least these things that she'd been putting off for a while were taken care of. And I think that's important to kind of think about, okay, what do I have going on that financially that I need to take care of so that now I can focus on some of these other unexpected costs that will come our way. And so um, I guess that's kind of where I start with folks.
What particular tips would you offer to people who are going through this?
Well, the big one is to understand how much they're spending on a regular basis, on a regular month. Now, you hear me say regular month, it kind of feels like no month is typical, right? There's one month, all of a sudden, life throws us a water heater that needs to be fixed. This is a real story because my water heater just went out. Wasn't expecting to fix my water heater, but this is life, right? Life throws us these unexpected financial hiccups, so to speak. And so understanding though what your typical month is like for spending is really important. I call it a spending plan rather than a budget because budget sounds so restrictive, but to understand what your typical month is for spending because that will help you absorb some of these unexpected costs, whether it's things that come up through the uncoupling process or, I mentioned home maintenance or dental work or a car repair or whatnot. And so, you don't have to get fancy with your spending plan or putting together that monthly budget, so to speak. It can be in Excel. Some people are Excel spreadsheets people, so they enjoy putting things in there to add up all the costs. But you can just use piece of paper and a pen and start writing down all those items. Of course, budgeting apps that you can use. Some are free. Some of these apps help you to track some of your transactions that show up from your credit card or your bank account. Whatever you use to help put together that list of what the average or typical things are that you spend every month, that's going to give you an understanding of where your money is going. And so that sounds kind of simple, but it's the foundation of helping understand the larger picture of your finances. Plus, if you are going from, okay, this is your current situation, and then if you start looking ahead to what your future situation will be after the uncoupling process, those are likely going to look very different, right? And so getting that level set monthly spending plan. And then that next step is that future potential spending plan. That helps us to just put our eyes on where our money is going. Don't forget that there's certain categories that are variable, meaning entertainment and eating out. That's not a fixed expense every month like a cell phone bill is. Don't forget about categories like, if there's gifts or miscellaneous or clothes or things like that. But so start looking back at your previous month's transactions, coming up with kind of an average to come up with a dollar amount that you anticipate spending on those variable categories. Again, like those variable categories, miscellaneous or gifts, and then entertainment, eating out, even groceries or gas. Those can vary from month to month, especially with holiday months. Groceries can be more expensive. And so again, it's just important to kind of look back the previous 3 to 4 months, add up all those costs in those different variable categories, and then average them out to come up with an amount. So that's where my biggest tip is around the spending plan. It can take some time, but it's important to just sit down and focus. The second thing is I advise people to list all of their assets. So, and again, this doesn't need to be fancy, but 1K plans, or how much you have in savings, how much is the value of your home may be worth. Do you have any 529 plans? Like whatever you have for assets, just listing all those out and approximate values. It's important to understand what all would come into play as you start to have financial conversations during this uncoupling process. And finally, I would just encourage you to come up with some kind of one-stop shop or folder to keep all these items in. So whether that's a digital folder on your computer or actually a physical folder where you collect statements and whatnot, put it all together as one place where you kind of know where it is. Otherwise, we start to feel scattered if paper and financial documents and statements are all over. And so that will just help you kind of focus and get things in line as you work through this process.
Great. Any last bit of advice you'd like to share?
I would just say, you don't have to go at this alone. There's people that you're meeting here today that are experts in their fields and they want to help. And so if you start to feel stuck in this process, whether it's, you just don't know the step forward, you are spinning at night, keep something keeping you up at night, and you feel like, I just don't know how I'm going to get through this particular part of the process, reach out to somebody that's an expert in this area to help. When I think of finances, sometimes the folks that I work with, they start to feel like all this stuff is a foreign language, right? So, and I get it. If I take my car to the mechanic and he or she tells me like what's wrong with my car, and they start telling me all this jargon around my car, right over my head, right? Like I just fixed my car. So same concept. If you start feeling like there's terminology or there's information you're receiving and it just feels like a foreign language, find experts who can help translate. You do not have to go at this alone. And there's people that want to help. Yeah. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it on to the next speaker, and I hope you reach out to help, or help you reach out so I can help.